There we go. Always something. Cool. So today, I need to make that a little bit bigger. Typist 0.14 is out. And I already know what's in it, mostly. But let's do a quick overview, because Typist is what we're using for the Rust language, like scripting. And it's something that I've been using for a little bit now. This is the original testing period for 0.14, which was about 2 weeks. So Typist does like release candidates, basically. But this morning, if the site will load, this is the forum site. That's not what I want. I want the blog. How do I find their blog? Blog. I feel like that should be easier to get. Okay, so we've got Typist 0.14 today. Typist 0.14, or Typist is like a LaTeX competitor. It's for generating PDFs, for writing markup, for math, for code, for a whole bunch of graphics and other things. So, good morning, Anders. How are you? I rub my glasses so I can even read chat. So I'm super excited. Typist does fairly regular releases. And they're better every time. So like, I'm super happy about that. I've been following Typist for, let's see, Chris Biscardi. I made a video on Typist over 2 years ago. See if this will give me an actual date on it. Yeah, April 27th, 2023. So I've been following Typist for 2.5 years now, something like that. It's very exciting. It's like the easiest way to produce a PDF that I've ever seen. It's significantly better than LaTeX in many ways. I'm sure that if you have like niche, like super specialized uses of LaTeX, maybe there are some things missing. But such is the state of something that is effectively an entire rewrite of like trying to generate PDFs. Hey Vidar, how's it going? Discovered Typist through your channel. Great tool. Nice. Yeah, so 0.14 is out. There's a couple things that I'm really happy about. In particular, accessibility is a huge thing, especially with PDF. And Typist seems to be putting a significant amount of effort into making their PDFs accessible, which is super important. For you, it was Nom. You discovered Nom from your channel and you love it. Yeah, I still love Nom. Nom still has a special place in my toolkit. I think that having a parser that is a parser combinator like Nom that is fairly stable in terms of its API, but is also extensible in the ways that you use it, is an incredibly powerful thing to just have access to, right? Like, I don't particularly need regex at all, because if I'm going to try to parse something, I can actually parse it with Nom or, you know, another parser library in Rust. But Nom is fairly lightweight in that sense. It's no standard compatible and all these other things. So super happy with Nom, even though there are currently competitors. So like Winnow is a fork, right? Uh, Winnow is kind of like somebody's, they were using nom and they wanted their own flavor of nom, so they forked nom and made some changes. But you can even see in the API on the front, they still use the same example nom does in their docs, right? This hex code color. There's a couple more macros and stuff like that. I like that nom moved away from macros. The macros from like nom 5-ish, I didn't particularly enjoy. I really like that they have a primarily function-based API these days. And nom 8 has also been great. Hey Cameron, how's it going? Good morning. So Typist continuing their investment in accessibility, which is fantastic. There's some stuff in here about PDF standards. I don't particularly have any need or care for various PDF standards. I just don't use PDF that intensely. I kind of make PDFs and I distribute them, and that's about it. I don't have a strong need for a specific PDF version, but you can now export to specific versions. They say that you can use PDFs as images in 0.14. I have to say I don't really understand what that means. Right? Is it just recursive PDF? Is it like the content from the PDF gets embedded in the PDF and thus it's all one PDF at the end? They did write an entirely new library for this, Hero. So it's a PDF interpreter and renderer in pure Rust, which is cool. I feel like the rewrite it in Rust kind of like overshadows the benefits. Like a lot of people are just like, oh yeah, it's another rewrite it in Rust, or like whatever. But having a library like this be written in Rust means that I know that I can do things like build it with cargo, I can embed it in an application, I can send it to, the browser or whatever. So there's a lot of benefits that come from having something like this written in Rust, aside from it just being like in Rust, right? They also say it's highly portable, this library, so I would assume that it's usable in WASM. Maybe not no standard. I don't know if they have any features in here. We could check. Let's go to crates. I guess the docs are also here. The docs would have the list of feature flags. Typically, if there's a standard feature flag, that means it supports no standard. It's possible this doesn't, because I don't even know if you can do PDF rendering no standard. It looks like they don't. Not that I have a great use case for like microcontroller PDF generation, but I'm always curious to see if these things have no standard support. Also some character level justification support in 0.14. So mostly like, if you're going to get into something like Typist or LaTeX or what have you for typesetting, something like an actual book, you probably also at some point really care about the layout of the paragraphs and the words. Otherwise, why are you using something like LaTeX or, Typist? I guess Typist is easier to use, so it's kind of like a markdown replacement, if you will. And not everybody who writes markdown cares, but pretty much everybody who likes LaTeX would care. So character level justification, very cool. And the thing I'm super excited about In 0.13, they got like prototype HTML support. This worked, but it didn't support a whole lot. And now they've expanded it to a bunch of built-in elements. Things like footnotes, outlines, and citations, which are really cool. They say most semantic elements in the model category. So the model category is bibliographies, citations, figures, footnotes. So anything that's like images and H1 tags, ULs, LIs, paragraphs, block quotes, kind of using the HTML terms as I'm going through these. Looks like tables work, which is really cool. Term lists. So this is all like all the basics that I would need in general. They say that there isn't necessarily support for all of the things that you can do in Typist. So there's a little bit of like, if you use the style APIs extensively, those don't necessarily translate. So I'm curious to see what the HTML output looks like. There's a demo here, but I want to run it on my own stuff. There's a new typed HTML interface, so you can do things like html.video instead of like html.lm and then like a stringly typed API for the attributes. I know that there are some people using Typist for course material that do like the equivalent of a media query for which target they're targeting. So if they're going to ship this as a like HTML script, basically like something like a media query, to include certain kinds of visualizations there. And then if it's in a PDF, use different visualizations. And if it's something else, use some other visualizations, like if it's a slideshow or like a keynote kind of thing. Which are all very cool because then you can kind of keep all the content like in the same document and then use that to kind of render to these other formats. Not that all content like works the same way, right? Not all written content that you would put in a book makes sense for a video, especially if those things are like in a print book versus on YouTube, for example. But it's still very cool. So it looks like it's as easy as features HTML. So we're just going to run this on the Typist document that we already have for the Rust language stuff. I already ran it on, like I ran 0.14, I think, on my project. So I don't really have to care about any of the deprecations. But kind of excited. If this works, I want to start using it on my website. I want to start being able to write stuff in Typist on my personal blog. So maybe we'll do some of that work today too. Right now, I have this just command running that's just watching. So let's see. This says 0.13.1. Command path type external. I forget how I install Typist usually. Looks like Homebrew still has 13.1, so maybe we go with Cargo. Cargo install Typist. CLI, Typist CLI is probably what it's called. Let's find out. I wonder if they have an installation doc for that tutorial reference. They have like a web editor and stuff. So a lot of the documentation kind of focuses on that kind of thing. Or rather gets directly into like authoring rather than installation. Page setup, table guide, web app, roadmap, community. They don't have regular installation on here. Okay, let's go to crates.io. Search for Typist. I think Typist CLI is what we need. Updated 3 hours ago. You can see 0.14 is very, very new. That's why it's not in Homebrew yet. So we're going to go Typist CLI for our install and let that run. I guess in the meantime, we stopped last stream talking about references. So ownership references, moving data, stuff like that. And we're running into kind of deref, coercion, and slices, drop, and copy semantics. So we covered kind of move semantics with the topic of ownership. And we probably also have to mention copy semantics here, especially if we're going to continue like talking about numbers, because numbers are copy semantics by default, whereas like capital S string or like a struct is going to be move semantics by default. I don't know how important it is to cover drop here. Drop is something that, in general, I think for somebody who's just getting into it, only serves to drive home that things go out of scope at some point. But we'll see. So let's just watch here. And we're running 0.14 on the dock. So the dock doesn't break, which is cool. Always nice for upgrades to not break the content that I've written. And then where's my just file? Just file. I have a little like new shell script written inside of a just file to do like active development on these books, but we are going to do typist. I think compile is the right subcommand. Rust quick start features HTML. I've kind of adopted the Rust like file structure. So inside of source, I have a main.typ. I don't know if this goes into a directory or not, if I'm being honest. We could just run it. But let's take a look at the HTML. HTML, PNG, PDF, raw HTML elements. Currently, Typist will output a single HTML file. Support for outputting directories with multiple HTML documents and assets, as well as supporting for outputting fragments that can be integrated in other HTML documents as planned. So we get one HTML file. So pretty good for like a single blog post. Does not output style sheets or CSS. Only really outputs markup. So we're going to need our own CSS of some kind. On the command line, we can pass in format HTML to the compiler watch subcommand, or provide an output file name that ends with HTML. Cool. So we'll just provide a file that says .html. We have to do features HTML and the HTML file. Oh, you get a live reload HTTP server. That's cool. LM typed frame. Okay. So there's some HTML specific functionality. Let's do typist watch. This features HTML, and then revisions Rust quick start.html. And I'm immediately getting some errors. Page configuration is not allowed inside of containers. Interesting. Does that happen if this is a PDF? No. So this is something that's available in the PDF target, but not in the HTML target. Also, there are some projects that rewrite the LaTeX compiler in Rust and Go. Yeah, but I think I'm not really interested in LaTeX, right? I think that I need to see some examples. Like, it's okay, right? But the way I would frame it is this doesn't bring me joy. I never really feel good about writing a LaTeX document. I think there's nothing inherently wrong with LaTeX from that perspective, right? Like, it works for a lot of things, but it definitely doesn't make me happy. If Typist didn't exist, I probably would end up using LaTeX of some variant, right? Because you have to pick your flavor, right? LuaTeX. I don't even know how you pronounce this one. Zetec? PDF Tech. And then to install LaTeX, you have to download like 6 gigs of like just random folders of stuff. I don't know. I don't have like a major problem with it. Like, it works for what it does, but it definitely feels old. And it definitely feels like something that I tend to like fight against rather than something that really brings me joy when I'm writing. So I'm very happy Typist exists. So page configuration is not allowed inside of containers. So the question here is there a way for us to include specific things? Right? Like, this template probably just doesn't work, right? We probably just can't use it. If it's just this page, that would be interesting. Page break was ignored during HTML export. HTML export is under active development and incomplete. I should probably like bring these up to a readable area. So we start by compiling a document that worked for PDF, right? We've written 20 pages of document at this point for Rust language educational stuff. We have some layouts. This says now, just because we're targeting HTML, page configuration is not allowed inside of containers. This sole set, we can comment out and then it will compile. So we have a hot reloading, like typist to HTML live reload server running. We can kind of like just grab this, pull this over here. We'll kind of let this go into 3 columns, maybe 2 columns. So we end up with an unstyled HTML document. We've got a whole bunch of links. These are internal links to all of the headings. I feel like these headings all of the hashes are like LOC38, and I would love to have those be specific hashes. So we'll have to look into that. External links work. So if I click this, this will take me to the Rust playground, which is incredible. All of the images work, but they aren't like centered like we had in our PDF. I didn't see the retracted message, so if you want to resend it, feel free to. Hey, Dahaka, how's it going? Talking about Typist 0.14 right now. So a lot of this still works. A lot of this requires alternative approaches, I think. So for example, we're going to need to patch into the code blocks here specifically, right? The code blocks here are not going to get highlighted. Oh, they do get highlighted. Hang on. So TOML gets highlighted. And Rust gets highlighted. So sick. I don't really need much more than that. We won't Weasel and WGSL at some point. So Weasel and WGSL being like things that might not highlight that we might have to implement support for somehow. I don't know how we add to Typist's language support, but honestly, really sick that this actually runs. What is this? This is a random source main.rs. So that'll be in quick start in quotes. So that's a heading. So it's an unstyled heading is what it is. I feel like if that's an unstyled heading, that's kind of unfortunate because it doesn't use the heading. It doesn't use like H1 tags. And that's something that I feel is pretty important. So we might have to do some like coercion of these headings to those outputs. So I think a little bit of cleanup to do, a little bit of styling to do. We could probably, what is the, there's a Tailwind like mega build URL, right? I don't need the JavaScript, but if that's the only thing they offer, let's dump the JavaScript in here. And then it says try adding some CSS. So we'll go back into our heading, edit this, dump this in. I don't really think that changed anything. Again, a lot of the native styling that we would get from things doesn't necessarily show up, right? It's also interesting that these export as PNGs, so it's a completely self-contained HTML file. The data for all of the images that we use in this post is embedded in that HTML file. Not my favorite choice, but they haven't covered like multi-file export yet. So completely understandable. So I think this is like usable, but there's a couple things that I would absolutely really want to fix if I was going to use it in my personal site. We can't use page breaks, so page breaks get ignored. I wonder if there's a way to be like media query this. Align also. So some of our custom styling for this little like term extension that I have. Let's look for typist docs. Was it in guides or reference? HTML export. Okay. You can check the current export format through the target function. When it's set to HTML, generate raw HTML elements. Cool. So this gives us if target. So anytime we're in a little code block here. And I think this is implying that we could potentially override headings. So maybe let's give that a whirl. I think this is styling API, so I'm not sure these set rules are going to work for us. Show heading set text navy. A transformational show rule, I think, is what we want here. Like we want a transformational show rule for headings that either outputs regular headings if we're doing PDF or like an HTML element if we're not. And then we can kind of package that up into this lib.rs or lib typist layout. And hopefully that will work. So theoretically, in lib, here's our template, right? Here's our heading. Here's our, I guess I'm already using a transformational show rule here, but do these headings don't take on the text anyway, right? Like this introduction to Rust is just a div. I really, really, really don't like that. So theoretically, trying to figure out exactly what code I need to write here. Also, there was a comment. As far as you know, Typist uses text make grammars, but you could also do something manually to generate the highlighting. Yeah. Yeah, I think using one of these transformational show rules could also work for code. So if we ever needed to do something that was truly custom, I think we have access to do that. But text make grammars, generally speaking, work for WGSL and Weasel. There are text make grammars out there. So show heading, it block. Emphasis, it dot body, counter heading dot display, it dot numbering. So we're putting in the body of the text as well as the number of the heading surrounded by tildes. And I think we want to have an if here. So where's our HTML target function? Right. Yeah, you mean show rules to basically just replace the content that you're selecting. That's why it isn't a heading in the HTML anymore. Oh, you think I messed this up? You think it works by default? That's actually entirely possible, now that I think about it. It is. We need to do nothing. This is entirely my fault. Thank you for pointing that out, Rem. Appreciate you. Okay, so what is the best way to do this then? Because I want to be able to specify the heading text, right? Right, like I want to be able to do this. It looks like that still works for HTML headings, which is cool. That's really good. And then let's do a just watch on the PDF. The PDF I have over here on my other monitor at the moment. Yabai, what are you doing to me here? So we end up with headings in HTML. And I think this is the correct output. Because if we didn't have this, this would not be styled. Yeah. So if we use set text for show heading, then it works for everything? No, that's not true. Well, it's kind of true. It gives us the headings in HTML and it gives us the text that we want in PDF, which is exactly what we want. Right? Like we want to specify the text of the headings for the PDF, and we also want the H1, H2, H3 elements in HTML. It doesn't matter for us if this HTML document doesn't have the correct font for headings, because we're going to have our own CSS file that will handle that. The set text part basically returns a function that goes from the original content to the content with the set rule applied. That's what I thought I was doing here, but I guess I was chopping it up, right? I should get a little bit deeper into, especially if I'm going to start doing like multi-format typist, I should get a little bit deeper into the scripting language. I've done basically as little scripting as possible over a long period of time. And I think if I'm going to start writing, 20 to 100 page Rust documents, which is what we're doing, then it makes sense to get a little bit more into the scripting and figure out what's supposed to happen here. So that means that these code blocks and stuff I am messing with. Right, set text fine, show raw. Right, so code. I don't know why I like searched for code. Let's look for FN main, because that'll be somewhere. So we end up with pre-code Rust. And I guess just returning it is good enough because pre-code Rust. So we aren't, this is the equivalent of what the set rule is doing, I guess, just returning it. I kind of want a class name on the pre-tag, but, we can always make that happen. First line indent we can't do because I don't think there's a setting for that for HTML, so it would make sense if that was getting ignored. And then the rest of our doc. And then the other thing would be we have quotes here. So let's go into main. I want to go all the way to the top. And I'm just going to do like, I forget how to write a quote, actually. So something like this. I guess we'll show Plato, why not? So here we get a paragraph tag, and that is probably my fault because we have this quote thing here, right? So if I get rid of this, we probably get a block quote. Apparently not. So quote with attribution doesn't turn into a block quote. Currently, I don't know if that's going to be always true or not. Primary use of these elements is in templates and show rules. So exactly basically the way that I want to use it is the way it's intended to be used, which is put everything in this like little template file and then have it all needs block true. Hey, Lorenz, how's it going? Needs block true as an argument. Oh, perfect. Love that. Just playing with the HTML export in 0.14 since it's a little bit more fleshed out. Been writing some Rust language content on stream for kind of like Rust beginners. So we've got like 20 pages of typist content here. So just using that to explore the new output. It's pretty solid, I have to say. I'm pretty happy with it. It seems like usable at least. Most of the issues that I've seen in the output are issues with like a template file or like a layout file that I was using where I was overriding the output in different ways. Someone posted a link to my stream in Discord. Cool, that's very nice of them. Thank you if that person is in chat right now. Typist not supporting CSS style sheets does not matter to me. I will have my own CSS. The hot reloading functionality is very cool, very useful. Let's see, LM frame typed. This is the typed HTML API, right? Like .video and whatever. Yeah. So that's very cool. Frame is SVG content. For plots and stuff. Nice. And then LM is arbitrary elements with the old style attributes. Yeah. So if something isn't in the typed API, there's a fallback in LM, which is sick. And then there's the tracking issue. So far, so good. I think the only thing that I can think of that will require some digging is I want to do Weasel syntax highlighting, which I almost guarantee is not in Typist's repertoire of code. Let's see if it is actually. Just try it. Doesn't really matter what this is. So you could even include CSS inside the document? Yes. Well, I don't know if there's a way to specify the CSS file using Typist. Presumably you could write a link raw element, but that would put it maybe in the body. I don't know if there's a way to put things in the heading. For me, let's take a look at the actual output here. .html. So this is the actual output. And meta viewport, content with dope, great defaults, bunch of other stuff. I feel like this is going to be a fine replace, like HTML LM style and then include it from an external CSS file. I don't know if you can do that. Let's find out. HTML. Let's look at LM. Let's look at typed first to see if typed is got a link element or something. What is base? Base URL and default target navigable for hyperlinks and forms. Ooh, is this base URL replacement for all links in the document? So any relative links will go. That's really cool. I really like that. Block quote ends link. So we got link for sure. Right? And we got type. Type looks like we can just put in style or as. Let's see, link, html.link href. I don't know if this will, that's what I get for having too many desktops. Let's go to the top here. html.link, which I think we need the hash on, right? HTML link as stir. Why is that an issue? Oh, potential destination for a preload request. Okay. So no difference from like your average CSS. Let's see if I can pull the CSS from my blog directly. Inspect. Wherever my href is coming from. Where's my link? Link. Reconnect. Fonts. Copy the HTML and we'll just kind of try to rewrite it here. So I will need to HTTPS, ChristopherBiscardi.com. Am I running www these days? Yes. I think my personal blog is old enough to where www is still considered best practice. So href, we don't need style per se. Rel will bring in, because I'll do rel before match what I had before. So theoretically, that should just shove a link in here. I don't think that link is going to unknown variable rel. Okay. That's interesting. Where is, get rid of some of these links so I can navigate. Right, form, it's not in my, oh, there it is. Link, rel, stir array. This normalized device coordinates thing is in the wrong place. Let's keep skipping over it. So rel, oh, because I used equals. Syntax error. Cool. Ooh, OBS having issues? Reconnection successful. Stream okay? Stream decided to dip out there for a second, according to my stats here. Like with HTML elm style and then from an external. Yeah, so we can pull in this style sheet, right? We get all the styles. This is probably the hot reload URL. I obviously haven't written like any, how do I frame this? I haven't written any styles that are like dedicated for this kind of output. One thing that I think that I could do if I wanted to, I don't want to edit all of it. Hang on. Add attribute. Class equals, what's the right class name for this? This is, it's not MD. Hang on. I need to remember what I do on my own blog. Tailwind markdown form styles. I forget what the word they use for this. Prose is what they use. But theoretically, if I throw prose on this, then everything gets styled because markdown also converts to HTML, right? So at the end of the day, it's all HTML. All of my links work, all of my headings work, random QR code here that I was testing. All of my list elements get their custom styling, which is really cool. I don't know. I might have to do something about this if I'm going to keep the outline around. I think if I'm going to keep an outline in an HTML document that comes out from Typist, I think we're going to want to keep the outline in some other place and render it like either move it using CSS to the right-hand side out of the flow of the text or something like that. But this is not really how I will want that styled because this looks a little bit overwhelming. I'll probably make it much more minimal, take these custom little UL icons off, take the little link things off, or make them a little bit more subdued. But otherwise, mostly looking good. Let's check out the... I wonder if there's a way to pick the theme for the code syntax highlighting. Probably using show rules and just picking colors, right? Here's a theme. Styling, yada, yada, raw. Syntaxes, theme. Themes should be in the TM theme file format. I think I have a TM theme file format for Night Owl. Let me check. I think I use a TM theme for Syntact already. So if I can find that file. There we go. TM theme Night Owl. Question is, which one am I actually using in my in my blog? It's not that I have 5 of them and I was using different ones for different things. Night Owlish. So this one's the one that I'm using. One day I will give up on VS Code. I don't know when that's going to happen, but it's going to happen. Okay, so we are in theme. Theme needs to be set to a path to load the theme file from the given path. Okay. So let's kill this, and I'm just going to dump the file here. Night Owlish should be sitting in the root. I actually, now that I think about it, I don't think that we can put it in the root because that will be outside of like the Typist project. So I probably need to drop it into assets here for each of these. Or I need to reorganize this directory because there's a bunch of different content in here and I probably want them all to use Night Owl. I do only want to use Night Owl if we're on web though. Because for a book, Night Owl is bad. Like that is just not a good, not a good theme for like white pages, right? Especially if the book ever got printed in black and white, for example. Just really terrible for like printed text. So raw is here. Can I define this inside of it? So theme with a path. Applying a theme only affects the highlighted text as expected. That's what pretty much all syntax highlighters do. And then you'll add like a background color. We could have a filled block for the background. We could automatically do that. I think I already have it in my CSS, so we probably won't. Raw block, set raw theme. That's what we want. And I'm back into the normalized device coordinates post. Assets, Night Owl theme. I think assets, Night Owl theme is the full path here. Night Owlish. So theoretically, that should have already worked, right? No, because I broke the watcher. I don't know how to put a class on the body. So the link in the class on the body are things that I really want to be able to modify. If I can't modify them, then I'll end up stripping probably or doing like find replace. And I would really like to avoid doing like find replace. Oh, there's global attributes. Hang on. Oh, those are global attributes to every typed HTML function. So I think either I'm not finding it or maybe it's an LM. I don't know. I kind of already have like the wrapping content. So I would love to be able to print this to actually HTML that didn't have like the heading and stuff. You can just add class. Like to the body element though? You can just add class. I have to wrap the entire document in a class then, which is fine. I can totally do that. But really what I want is all of the HTML content without the wrapper to all the typed HTML elements. Yeah, but is it possible to modify the like wrapper? Does that make sense? Like the typist HTML content is all of the headings, all the paragraphs, all the code blocks, all the content, right? And the things that I cannot find a place for right now is How do I put a link tag in the heading, in the head tag? How do I put a class on the body or a class on the HTML element? And realistically, if I'm going to use this on my personal blog, I already have all of that, right? Like I already have this whole head written out for a whole bunch of different stuff. And I'll just drop it in probably somewhere, like if I go to one of my random posts here, this is like a Bevy observer filters post, right? This should be inside of this element specifically. I'm using Leptos, so it'll be a Leptos island. But here's my main tag, right? This is where the content goes, inside of this tag. So really what I want is not to have a body, not to have an HTML head section. The last sentence in the top level description of HTML. In the top level description. Normally, Typist will generate HTML head and body tags for you. If you instead create them with this function, Typist will omit its own tags. Oh, so if I create the body tag, then Typist somehow knows through this HTML LM that I have created the body tag and will not insert its own. So for the approach that I'm thinking of here, what I would really do is probably do a pass through on the body and then empty HTML and empty head, and I would get no wrapper. Let's give it a whirl. Right, because if I do HTML LM body, for example, adders, style, whatever. In this case, let's try this first. Let's do not style, but class. And this will be prose. And this has content inside of it, but we should be able to use the show syntax. Let me see. LM adders, none content, none or content. Contents of the HTML element, the body can arbitrarily default none. So can we just delete this end part is a question. Body still shows up without the class name. Am I running my, nope. Okay, so I have a syntax error. Body element must be the only one in the document. So this doesn't seem to let me do that. If you create them instead with this function, Typist will omit its own tags. So maybe I'm doing it wrong. Let's start with HTML. So you think not HTML.lm, but a show rule? Which is what? Hang on, I need to look up the syntax for the show rule. The element I would use here would be HTML, or would it be HTML.body at the top of the file? Hang on. HTML body with the typed API. This is now a blank show rule that replaces all the content with the result of the function. Okay. But how does it know that I'm using... I guess it does an introspection of the AST to determine whether I'm using HTML body here or not. What just beeped? You ever just hear a random beep and you haven't heard that particular beep before? Let me make sure that wasn't like a random Discord message. Not the AST, but the data model, yeah. I haven't done really any exploration into what these show rules turn into and how they're processed. So this is an empty show rule, similar to the one that I'm using for template here. So let's get rid of template for a second. I guess template is fine still. What happens if I have two empty show rules? Because that's effectively what I have with the template, right? So theoretically, I already have this, and thus, like, this would be the equivalent. And then let me get rid of this random LM here. They're applied after each other, you think? Let's make sure that I haven't made any syntax errors. Doesn't look like it. That definitely didn't get used. So what did I do wrong? I didn't have the hash. Right? And then because this is code, do I get to just say doc there? Because there's like different modes, right? And then HTML body. HTML body here, document body. Presumably has all of the attributes that are generic attributes, which should include class. So I should be able to say class equals whatever. And then the result. I don't know if I need the square brackets or not on the end of this. I'm going to figure it out. So this should have pros on it if that worked. It does not. So class here, unknown variable class, because I use equals again, because I don't know why I keep using equals, because I know it's not equals. Okay, so body class pros, that's working at least. So theoretically, if I use body, like so we can definitely replace that with the class name, right? Which is good. I think that I have a bunch of like wrapper content. So I want to treat this kind of as pure content, right? I don't really want the wrappings at all. So we can absolutely replace the body with HTML body, class pros, whatever. We could do that presumably with HTML as well, right? Which should be somewhere in here. Yeah, HTML.html. So theoretically, we could just throw doc in here. Question being, so we do have control over that element. We unfortunately can't remove it, as far as I can tell. I don't know what happened here. That looks like I messed some show rule up or something. This is supposed to be backticks? No, these are strongs. We don't, this is an apostrophe. Not really sure what happened there. Maybe that's a text thing. That is what the show rule is for. Just take all the content after the show rule and puts it in the argument of the function you give to the show rule. Right, so we have like a generic show rule, or I guess this is a template, right? So we're show lib.template. This is the doc. As far as I can tell, if we use html.html, we can control the HTML element, right? But there's no way for us to unset that there is an HTML element there. Right? Like, we're very clearly treating this as controlled, right? We are responsible for this HTML element now. But I actually don't want it to exist in the output. So because it's a little bit like magical, it's a little bit introspection-y, right? Like you were saying, it's the data model that determines whether we are in control of that HTML or not. Like theoretically, this would be an HTML element and then everything inside of it. But that's just nothing. HTML class pros. HTML element must be the only top element in the document. So if we use this, we can't put anything next to it. If we don't use this, it gets inserted for us. And there's no, is there a default attribute to like unset it? I guess we would show rule the HTML itself. So we don't need this because we're gonna override it. So this would be show HTML, right? Theoretically. What does our VS Code have to say? This isn't the browser inserting the heading, is it? Yeah, so we still get the doc, like we'll get the doc type, we'll get the HTML, we'll get the head, and we'll get the body. And really I want this. Well, without the link, but the link is my fault. So really I want this, right? I want an HTML fragment instead of a whole document. Because on my site, I already have this whole head set up. And I don't want to replicate it. I just want to use Typist for the content. So I could strip this later. Like that would work, right? I just go in and I say everything before body gets destroyed and everything after body down here also gets destroyed. And then we have the content, which is a fine workaround. I just wanted to figure out if it was possible to actually remove that using Typist APIs. And I don't think it is. Access key, ARIA stuff. ARIA. IDs, hidden. Not sure if unwrapped HTML fragment is supported. In the worst case, you might call the Typist compiler from Rust. Yes, that is what I'm going to end up doing. Like, I have my blog here, right? And it pulls in, it's effectively a static site built with Leptos and islands. So really what I'm going to end up doing is pulling in this crate, which I haven't looked into the 0.14 version of this crate at all. So I don't know if there's like an API that will specify whether to wrap this or not. Right, parsing, evaluation, layout. What I don't want to do is any like custom AST traversal manipulation. I want to keep it as straightforward as write a Typist document, let the Typist compiler handle it, and just decide whether we're getting that wrapper or not. For 0.13, you found HTML fragment. Let's see. Doesn't look like it's currently a function. Or did you mean in the crate docs? Realization kind, HTML document, HTML fragment. So maybe this is passed into one of the APIs. Just Google it. It's in docs.rs in a separate crate. Here's the tracking issue. LM. You mean typed HTML? This is what you're talking about, which is, I think, the same crate. Yes, this is the same crate. It's an official crate. Uses the same README, but let's look at the docs for that, I guess. Fragment output, unchecked. So fragment output currently not supported. So this single file format is the only one that's currently supported, which is totally cool because I'm fine with doing a little bit of post-processing on that. It's no, there's also this function that you were just talking about. Produce HTML nodes from content. Encodes an HTML document into a string, produces an HTML document from content, produces HTML nodes. So theoretically, I don't really want to have to divvy it all up into individual nodes if I don't have to. Looks like content might be the whole thing, which is cool. I'll have to look into this off stream because I haven't looked at this crate at all. It's nice to know that this function exists, but I don't necessarily think that's what I want it to do. Document, content, styles. First performs root level realization and then turns the resulting elements into HTML. So it looks possible, at least. Internal, so maybe I'll lock to 0.14. I might like literally take this function and just say, hey, until this is officially supported, TBD. Hey, Zeno, how's it going? But we spent an hour and a half on typist upgrades, so new typist features. So let's move off of that topic. Very excited about this though. The HTML seems actually like fully usable, which means that I can now put it on my personal site, put it on Rust Adventure, and start actually using it. There's a couple. There really aren't that many hangups. I think the fragment thing is really the only thing that I really care about. There are like the data URIs for the images is something that I have to look into, because if I use a bunch of images in the post, then they'll all get dumped into that HTML. It's not the end of the world, but I do tend to use like Cloudinary to do dynamic sending of appropriate sized images and stuff. So maybe I'll write a show rule to replace the default handling of those images. But minus one or two things, very, very cool. Very, very like looks useful, looks like it's supposed to, etc. The only other thing is this target function, right? So if target, where's target is somewhere, target function. So if target do one thing, else do another. So in this case, I want to, if target not equals HTML, then set page. I think we're already in a code mode here, right? Or do I have to put the curly braces around it? Let's get that HTML show rule out of here. Let's get this out of here. Let's get the link at least commented out, if not out of here. Bunch of random testing. Okay, page configuration is not allowed inside of containers. So do I have to set this into that mode? No. You're not in code, no, and you might have to add a context. Let's see. How do I put this into scripting mode? Set the hash. Content block, square brackets, code block, curly braces, content and code blocks. Where's the target function? This is defining a function. So I'm not even sure if this target function can be used in a show rule. The function is contextual. Where's show? Documentation for show, please. I guess that's styling. Set show. These are all functions, right? Show. We're in a content block, right? Technically. So that doesn't really make sense. Maybe I have to use the it form. Context is a bit complicated, but you describe it as the values getting monomorphized about where the context gets evaluated in the end. Okay. Okay, so it implements basically a bunch of different functions for the quote unquote generic that you're defining. Let's do, I want to use the simplified form of this. Well, I guess I don't need to use the simplified form of the page, but what is the actual error? The error is page configuration is not allowed inside of containers. It is definitively that set page. Somebody open this in the release candidate period. Not a fan of just ignoring the HTML element. Yep, totally agree with that. Love not having silent errors. Set page. I guess this always gets evaluated and then therefore is always an issue, whether we have it behind, whether we have it behind an if or not. I'm not even so sure that if is supported in this position. Yeah, hash if, and then block. So theoretically, hash if, and then block. And then that can only be used when context is known. Okay. Let's look up more information about context. Ooh, that's the very next page. We cannot access these without a known context, as they may change throughout the course of the document. When context is available, we can retrieve them by accessing them as fields on the respective element function. So value equals context text lang. Value. So value equals context target. I feel like having a multi-line expression here is not going to do me very well, but and then right back to page configuration is not allowed. So I think this is either like a thing that can not even be in the document if we're going to export to HTML at the moment. So just need to keep that in mind. Oh, this I was also target is also the other thing, which doesn't seem to make a difference. I'm missing a leading. Oh, I was missing a leading hash before. Yeah. So let value equals context theoretically target. If value is not equal to HTML, then set page. I think this doesn't matter either way because this shows, oh, there it is. That feels weird, right? Is that just me? Value is context target. If value is HTML, then set page. And set page is the thing that's the problem. So value must not be HTML, which means that target doesn't give me the value that I think it is. That's not going to work like that. Yeah. You can only access values of things inside of the context. Inside of the context is treated as an opaque object outside. Wait, you're telling me I can't write context like that? I'm pretty sure that's what it says in the docs, right? It says let value equals context this thing, and then uses the value. Theoretically, it would be like this, but if I can't do that, then this is really confusing. I guess this is just writing the value into the document. So the value you're saying is opaque, so I can't inspect it. I think that's what you mean. So I can't use if because the context value is just like a blob of something, and I can't actually look at the content. Yeah, that's what it says. If I had read 2 sentences later in the docs. Crucially, upon creation, values becomes opaque content that we cannot peek into. Okay. Okay, so just another to-do, kind of, to figure out, I guess. Guess we'll take it out of the PDF for now. Oh, context if target equals HTML. I'm definitely stumbling through this. If it's not clear that I am not familiar, I'm nowhere near as familiar with Typist scripting as I am with like writing Rust. And then we're in code mode because of the hash and the curly braces. So theoretically this, where we should see the issue. And then if I turn this off, we should not see the issue. Cool. Thank you for the code snippet, Rem. I appreciate that. Clearly having some syntax issues. So context allows us to use context-based functions, which allows us to then use those functions' values in ifs and then conditionally use things like set. And then theoretically, from what you were saying earlier, you're saying this is a little bit like monomorphization, which theoretically would mean that a different version of this is compiled in based on the value of target for that particular location. I don't know if it's that fancy, if it can pull a list if out or not. Yeah, okay. That's cool. So that leaves really the only thing as that HTML fragment, which I can solve in multiple ways. I will have to use the Typist crate to integrate into my blog to compile Typist documents. The other thing I want to check before we're done here is there's headings for like working with ownership, let's say. LOC 18. This ID I want to change. So let me leave a note next to the headings. That's basically like to do change ID of headings in HTML documents. Yes, it's basically dispatching the context where you are using the value and reinterpreting it, quote unquote, based on where it's rendering it. Cool. So context dependent blocks effectively. This tends to be like I guess theoretically target could be one or the other. Like somebody could set target. It's global in my mind right now because we're either doing one or the other. But I guess if you're inside of like HTML LM, then the target has to be HTML, right? So that would be context dependent. Also means you can access things like layout data. Cool. Cool. All right, so I'm actually very happy with the HTML output, if I'm being honest. I need to put a little bit of elbow grease in to make it fit into my stuff. But overall, very happy with this. Could also, I mean, just dropping the full HTML is also an option. The way that I'm using it on my personal site is as a static site. So those can be HTML files. But on Rust Adventure, none of that is HTML, right? So Rust Adventure has a bunch of stuff, and all of these articles and workshops and all of the written content on this site is currently Markdown. I would like it to not be Markdown. I would like to switch to Typist. I think the HTML output is in a good enough place where I could feasibly do that. I think one thing that I don't currently have an answer for is the equivalent of front matter for these documents. I don't know if the crate gives me a way to like pull values out. Let's do docs.rs types. So parsing and evaluation, but can there be like output variables? I have to believe that this is a thing for other use cases. Utilities, text handling. Let's see if the docs have anything about data output. Scripting, context, assert, maybe with metadata. Exposes a value to the query system without producing visible content. This element can be retrieved via the query function and from the command line with Typst query. From the command line with Typst query. Ooh. We're going to try this right now. I'm excited. I keep saying we're going to stop looking at this, and then I keep getting excited by new Typst features. Okay, so metadata, this is a note, and then note. I've got a couple of, you can retrieve specific fields using the CLI. Presumably you can do that via the crate as well. It would be nice if I didn't have to run a pre-pass on all the Typist documents to generate this, but you know, it's a static site for my personal site, so I can totally do that. And as part of the import, I can also do that for content that I write for Rust Adventure. Valid values are paged in HTML. Cool. So metadata is what? String, and then this is query. Look at metadata. Metadata is anything. The value to embed into the document. And then some content. So cool. let's stick some random stuff in a Typist document. Let's just start with whatever this is. Hopefully that'll just return like note with the 2 angle brackets. But I want to get a working query before I start messing with stuff. Query for note. So note is the label, which is interesting. So we'll query Rust quick start source main for note. And then target is unknown. Target features HTML. Okay. So func metadata value, this is a note, label note. So is this just like a query for anything? Like if I query for this, is it going to find that? No, it's going to find note specifically. And it gives it to me as JSON. So metadata value, this is a note, label note. And that is a string. Right now, some of my other content is written as KDL. So I could slap those 2 things together. I am so lost in so many desktops that I have open. So here's some KDL for a post that I am in the middle of kind of authoring, right? So here's stuff. And I could totally just dump all of this like that. And I can just call this like front matter. I don't know if the angle brackets are necessary. We're about to find out. You can query for everything that typists can query for. This is a bit limited in some spaces, but usually exposes enough info. That's very cool. Is there a raw string? Backslashes? Angle brackets is a syntax for labels. Okay, so I have to use angle brackets. If I was going to do something like this. I'm just calling it front matter for no real reason. That may not be what I end up using. So hash theoretically is the key there. So hash, and then I wonder if multi-line string here even works. For a new line. So if I did it like this, I would have to escape every new line. It still looks like a lot's wrong there. I want a raw string. I don't think I'm using a raw string. You probably want to wrap that in an array table, because then it would just output like I want it to. All right, let's look at table or array first, since array is in the outline sitting right there. I think table probably, because these are labeled about here. Table. Man, OBS really having some issues today. You meant dictionary. Okay, cool. Too much Lua. Well, you know what they say about Lua, right? It's always one step ahead. Get it? Nobody says that about Lua. Okay, dict with keys and values. Cool. So this is what I want roughly, this syntax. And then hopefully this can be multi-line. So not really the like most amazing way to write KDL. It's kind of like embedding KDL in a table in but it doesn't need to be KDL. I can totally change whatever I'm doing here. So note this is going to be looking for front matter now. And then this is going to find front matter. It's going to be presumably a JSON serializable value. This is one giant array. So title, oh, yeah. Thank you. I don't know why I did that. Okay, so we get a value that is a JSON object with keys and values. Presumably, this might work. So maybe I just directly get structured data. Would be cool. So I get a value. Let's format this because it's a little bit weird to look at. Format document. So we get an array of stuff because theoretically we could have matched like multiple things can be called front matter, presumably. Oh, parentheses. Okay. So that should probably clean this up too, because this is the output of like direct typist content then. So let's grab this. Yeah, it's significantly shorter. Format document. So value, title, slug, tags, sick. This is awesome, actually. Curious as to what happens if there are multiple of them, but it doesn't really matter. I think I just get two of them, right? Yeah, as expected. So that's very cool. That's very cool because I feel like even if, well, I can probably just query for all the bibliography data then too, right? Like if I'm doing citations inside of this post, I can probably just query for all of them and dump them. Yeah, I mean, I could dump it. I was a little concerned about the, like I don't actually need, unknown flag. Did I mess up my strict objects? In any case, because I'm using new shell, I can do things that are pretty cool like this. I think pretty is the right flag for this. Maybe -p. Why am I my opportunity and I'm messing it up? To JSON, raw, serialized. Maybe it does pretty by default in the newest version. I upgraded recently. Yeah, it does pretty by default in the newest version. Sweet. New shell's pretty sick. I don't actually need JQ. I can just plug it in and query it and do whatever directly in the shell, which is very enjoyable. Cool. Well, I'm hyped about that. That is very, very, very cool. We can use typist query either on the CLI or presumably via the crate in some way to kind of just query random data. I presume that we can query bibliography data and stuff like that, or just pull it from the actual bibliography file or whatnot. That's really exciting to me because I feel like one of the things when I write content is that there's always so many resources that information is based on, right? There's so many places that you can get information. And I have Zotero over here and I dump a bunch of stuff into Zotero. For example, there's this like material layering collection and it has this video that I was watching the other day that has some cool information about material layering. Here's, every post that I've read about radiance cascades and things like that. So I want to be able to dump the Zotero stuff or use the Zotero stuff to do a bibliography, to use that for all my posts so that I can reference these things automatically. And then also when I export to HTML, just dump all of that bibliography information at the bottom of the post. And then I can just cite everything. And I don't have to worry about like implementing some custom, bibliography support in Markdown or something. The query function should give you the info you need on what and how you can query. Yeah. I mean, I assume that if you say that you can query anything that Typist can query, I think Typist can query all of that information, right? And you can query all the headings and stuff too, right? So like if I wanted to create my own outline and not use Typist to do the outline itself, I could do that and just have that array of information and dump that into some custom, Leptos function or JavaScript function or, custom HTML snippet generator. I'm super excited about this. This is like, I don't know. I was a part of some markup language stuff in the past, extensions to Markdown and things like that. And they were fine, but this is really good. Like, I'm just very happy with the direction that Typist is going. Anyway, let's get off the Typist hype train because I'm definitely just standing here going, I need to figure this out, and then doing it and being really happy about it. I highly suggest going to check out Typist. Typist is awesome. Yeah. Back to Rust language stuff. I'll probably make a short out of some of that Typist stuff. I'm very excited though. That's so cool. I'll just comment that out so it doesn't, so I'm not generating GJK collision algorithm metadata for this random post. You know what I should do? I should write my first Typist post today in Typist about Typist on my personal blog. That's what I really should do. I'll do that later. Okay, so let's get back into Rust language development stuff, because that's one of the things that I said I was doing today, and I already spent 2 hours mucking around with cool typist stuff. Unknown variable target. Let's do, where's that one thing? I forgot to check my ability to handle this here. So context target, unknown variable target. Is there a way to check for existence of this? Do I have to specify, let me use the compile from the CLI, right? This is for HTML. This is for PDF. Both of those work. So I think I just need to enable the HTML feature for that to be a thing. Where's my just file? We'll do, can I put this earlier in this, or do I have to put it after? Right, because if we remove features HTML, we see the warning. If I do typist features HTML, that's the wrong spot for it. Maybe after compile features HTML. Very sophisticated here. Because now I'm using HTML target features. So I guess target is only available for HTML, which is fine. Now I'm using it. And now this should just work. Sick. And we have our little heading, right? We don't have our little heading, actually. So this, if it's not equal to HTML, is not setting the heading. If I uncomment this, I do get the little heading in the top right. So I'll have to investigate this little target thing a little bit more. The set sadly only applies in the current scope, making things a bit more complicated. Oh, so I have to wrap the entire thing in context. That's fine. I can do that. That's not the worst thing ever. I don't know if this will work, but we're just gonna rock it for a second and see. Not valid in code. All of this stuff is now code. So I think we can do this right where we do the doc, just to limit kind of area of impact, right? Only applies in the current scope. So can I make my doc part of that scope? Yes. And then else doc, right? So then we keep it here, and then hopefully this works. This is the HTML. It doesn't seem to have an issue with it. Let's check. Looks like it's working. All good. This doesn't bother me too much. Put the doc into the if then. Yeah. I am not particularly bothered by this. Could be cool if it worked, but it's also not that big of a deal. Cool. Back to content. So the Rust language book, then, we have, I guess, about 18 pages of really three things here. So where is our... We've got three sections. We've got why Rust. We've got an introduction to Rust, which is like a less than 30-minute introduction to Rust. And then we've got a Rust like quick start. Well, actually, why Rust and introduction are the same thing. I forgot I split those into two headings. So why Rust and introduction to Rust are like one kind of set of content. Why would you use it? If you're somebody who like hasn't written Rust yet, why would you get into it? If you're kind of curious, here's why you would use it and some introductory stuff. And then there's like the Rust quick start, which is creating a new Rust project, cargo toml source main. Rust is an expression-based language. We started doing ownership, so data is owned by one variable. And that's kind of where we left off. We kind of left off at needing to do some chatting about deref coercion and slices. So the last example had three sections. Working with ownership. We had this function that printed numbers, and we tried to use it twice and showed the compiler error. And the compiler error was kind of like, hey, this is, moved, right? So working with ownership, you have basically three options. The first one we went over was cloning, just create a duplicate of the value. Moving data, so moving it into a function, moving it out of that function, moving it into the next function, just moving data around everywhere. Which I think is important because I don't think this is covered in a lot of other Rust introductory content. I feel like people think the options are pass a reference or clone, and they kind of forget that you can just give ownership to something and then take it back. And then there's references, which is the big thing, right? Like the thing that we have to mention. So we talked about vex up here. And really, I want to take the document here. Let's see, we have a little bit of code. Not the radiance cascades, that's the wrong. That's Zotero, that's for later. Visual Studio. There we go. So we have a program here. And I've actually already written the new program. The new program is this slice. So we have to talk a little bit about why this works. That's the other thing. I'm going to leave a TK here for link or cite. Right? We aren't using a bibliography for this right now, but I think we should. So I'll build that bibliography off stream. And for now, I'll just keep using link. So we haven't talked about traits yet. So calling deref a trait really isn't going to land for a lot of people. Deref coercion is really what I want to link to here. Right? Not just deref, but specifically the coercion. TK means what? Basically to do. This is really what it means. It means to come. Like, this is going to come later. This is something that I'm going to do later. It's like a publishing version of to do. It's also something, it's like a collection of words that doesn't come up in text. So like you could write to do in a sentence, and you would find that if you search for to do everywhere. But TK it just doesn't come up anywhere near as much as like TODO does. So if I want to search this document for things that I needed to do later, searching for TK or TK, or like more TKs is like more priority. One thing you can do later would be to query for Rust snippets and doc test them. Yes, actually, I was thinking about that. I don't know, something like last year. I was trying to figure out whether I should build the code and include the code from the Rust file, or if I should go the direction that you're talking about, query for the Rust snippets and then doc test them. I think what I want to do is go the other way. I want to write the code snippets. I want to write the code examples, have them all around, and then include them in the actual document. Because then all of the code snippets are like full projects ready to go. So anybody can clone a repo and be like, oh, the code snippet from here is from this file with a cargo toml and whatever set up and ready for me to run, rather than just having it be pure content. So that's another reason to get into the scripting, so that I can kind of include snippets of other files. Very similar to the way that Rust doc tests include snippets. The query approach is a good middle ground. I think the query approach is actually easier. I would have to mark the code blocks for execution, because not all of them are going to be doc testable. Some code examples here don't compile, right? Things like that. Typist has read, which isn't too hard either. What is read? Function. Reads a plain text or data from a file. Cool. Read as UTF-8, returned as a string, returns raw bytes instead. Looks perfect for dumping into a code block. I think I want to build something that's a little bit more sophisticated, but this will work for a temporary solution in that sense. I want to build something where I can choose to either highlight lines or hide lines or whatever. Actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, Universe already has something like this. I don't know. Heidi, is it Zebra? It's not Zebra. It's something else. It is Zebra. Okay, so Zebra is kind of what I will use for code highlighting, I think. Like more sophisticated code highlighting. And then I should be able to combine that with read to result in, I don't know, this is a huge page of documentation. I don't want alternating backgrounds, don't care about that. Should have looked for a... Fibonacci comments. Right, there's line highlighting here, so I can highlight specific ranges of lines. I think there is hiding, line slicing. So if you get this input, which is grid columns hello world end, right? Grid columns hello world end. You can slice it to only show subsegments of that code and assign line numbers and stuff to them. So I think I'm going to do something like that. I'm going to combine read with Zebra, and then I'll have everything set up in projects, be able to compile and test them, and then have them included in the Typist document. And thus I will know that all the code works. For now, I'm just writing it like this. The one thing about Rust language content is that not a lot of it goes out of date. Stop saying typist. It's typist. I'm not pronouncing the I. It's just like the accent that I have. If you want me to be like Typst, I can't do that for every word. Like typist is not me pronouncing the I. It's me transitioning from the P to the ST. Yeah, like I know that it's like there's no I there, just to be clear. Like I know that. I'm not intentionally pronouncing an I. It's just the way that that word comes out of my mouth, because it's typesetting, like carries that P into the ST for me. And thus it sounds like I'm saying typeist, and I'm not intentionally saying typeist. I get a lot of comments about that, so it's definitely something that I've thought of before. I've definitely looked it up in the repo as well. I think they took it out of the README. There used to be a pronunciation guide, and it was like TY as in typesetting, and like pist as in hipster. So typist. But yeah, maybe I'll leave Lorenz. Maybe I'll meet Lorenz or somebody in person one day, and I will get them to help me correct my pronunciation. Yeah. Right? Typist. Right? Typist. T as in typesetting, and pst as in hipster. So like, to me, that combines into typist. Typst. Typst? Since y'all know, y'all seem to know, so I'm asking. I'm like literally asking. Typst? Does that sound right? Typst. Okay. Well, I'll trust y'all. Because from this explanation, right, it's got type and ipster. And both of those have the E and the I before and after them. So I don't know. Everyone tells me it's the I isn't bold. Yeah, but they need to use a different word here then, because both of those lead into and lead out of those sounds. Right? And I've looked this up as well. Like I've looked the IPA up and I've listened to it. So like it's not like I haven't tried. Just to be clear. But that needs to be changed for me, I think. Not changed like for me, but like me reading that, typesetting and hipster, typist makes sense from those readings. I think also due to the connotations of like typesetting, like why would it not be typist? But yeah, I don't know. It's like for most things, I'm pretty good. This is like the one word that I consistently have issues with. Since the prints numbers function only accepts a shared reference, it cannot mutate the vec I32. Cool. Idiomatically, we were going to accept a vec of I32 as an argument. We likely want to accept a slice instead. So we have to introduce slices here. This is because many types, I'll quote container types, because container isn't like an actual jargon for this in the sense that it's not an official word for the name of the thing, but like this is because many container types can be easily turned into a slice of their items. We have to explain what slices are, which leads us into like string and string slice at some point here. We have to finish, I think, the rest of ownership before we get into that. So we have deref, coercion, and slices. So idiomatically, if we're going to accept a vec I32 as an argument, vec I32 is the right type, we'd likely want to accept a slice instead. And this can be the link to slice. This is because many container types can easily be turned into a slice of their items. So accepting a slice as an argument places fewer restrictions on what a user can store their data in. How a user can store their data? This is because many container types can be easily turned into a slice of their items, so accepting a slice as an argument places fewer restrictions on how a user can store their data that they pass into our function. That seems a little bit wordy. Accepting a slice as an argument places fewer restrictions on how a user can store the data that they pass into our function. I think this is just two sentences. This is because many container types can easily be turned into a slice of their items. Accepting a slice as an argument places fewer restrictions on how a user can store the data that they pass into our function. Maybe caller instead of user. Caller's a good call. The other thing about this is that it is for people who know maybe like one other language. So using too much specific jargon is going to be distracting. I think caller works. But I might want to rephrase. Accepting a slice as an argument places fewer restrictions on how the data maybe I just avoid it. Accepting a slice in an argument places fewer restrictions on how the data that is passed into the function is stored. I think that's generally good. I could argue either way about there being fewer restrictions here, because I feel like using generics kind of places more restrictions, but frees you up to use whatever you want because there are more restrictions. So in effect, as an end user, you have fewer restrictions on what you can actually pass in, but the function itself is highly restricted to only operate in a certain way. So since we're talking about the way that you can use this function, I think fewer restrictions is correct. And then we do the code block, maybe. On how the data passed into the function is stored. Yeah, that's fine. I like that. No reason to use extra words if fewer will do. Consider the following example, which has one key difference from the shared references example above. The argument is a slice. The argument to print numbers. Let's be specific here. Contiguous is like technically important if you're looking at the implementation of slice, but I think from someone who doesn't know any Rust yet, they don't really care about what contiguous means here. Everything that they get from like a vec is going to be contiguous. And if they start throwing random elements into an array, they'll either get an array and not a slice, or they will quickly realize that they need to use a vec instead. So I think that ignoring or like subtly omitting that this is contiguous data is okay here. Memory layout is only relevant if you know in C and C++. I agree with that. That is like memory layout is only important if it impacts the way that you have to use something, right? If I was describing how to pass data into a shader, then the memory layout is important, right? Because you have to define the layout in a certain way for it to say work on WASM with WebGL. But for defining a random vec and passing it into a function, memory layout, not super important. We've covered shared immutable references, so we can mention that these can be like mutable slices or immutable slices. We don't really need to talk about subranges or anything. So one of the key restrictions on the content that I'm currently writing is that each of these headings has approximately 2 minutes in the grand scheme of things. Shorter is generally better. This is, where's the outline? Outline is way up here. So the quick start is like creating a new project, Rust is an expression-based language, ownership stuff, your own structs and enums, how to handle errors, control flow, pattern matching, generics and traits, iterators, how to write documentation, how to test, and then finally like a how to read documentation section. And all together, if I remember counting earlier, it's like 10 or 11 headings plus the intro. The intro I'm giving 5 minutes. The headings I'm giving about, you know, the other 25, and anything that we can. You have a plan for how long this Rust Adventure workshop development will take. You followed a few live streams and enjoyed it so far. I have two answers. One is that the two videos that are like the beginning set of videos, like the why Rust and the Rust quick start video, like the 30-minute video that I keep mentioning, I'm hoping to have those fully scripted by the end of the weekend. So hopefully those videos come out next week if I can put it together. And then we're going to start digging into deeper dives into each of the pieces of content. So there's going to be an actual like introduction to the Rust language segment. So the quick start is all of these headings, and then we're going to go introduction to Rust language. And introduction to Rust language is basically all of those headings in a little bit more depth. So they're going to be their own videos. So I'm hoping to have those two videos done sometime this week. And then the rest of the full like language treatment will take a little bit longer. We'll see how long it takes. And then the answer for like Rust Adventure as a platform is something that I work on all year. So we'll finish the language stuff at some point, and then I'll do more. I already have Bevy workshops that I've updated to 0.7 that I need to record. So those will get recorded soon. We'll do some WASM stuff. People have asked for Leptos and web backend stuff, so we'll do that. And it's just going to be a continuing thing, right? Like I just create more of those workshops over time as people request them. So those are the two answers. Two answers, like very short term, like 2 videos, maybe next week. This half-hour video, hopefully next week. The longer term is I just keep developing more workshops. So I don't know how much I'll do on stream in general. People seem to really like it when I do this work on stream. So I'll continue doing it on stream as long as people are enjoying it. But yeah, so I've got to get through what ownership, custom data, error handling, control flow, pattern matching, generics, iterators, documentation testing, and how to read documentation this weekend. That's a lot of writing. But I'm trying to put more concerted effort into the Rust Adventure kind of platform of workshops. So I think this is the right way to spend my time right now. And I'll keep switching back and forth because I imagine if I do Rust language stuff every day, people will get tired of it. So I'll switch back and forth between doing like Rust language stuff and then Bevy stuff. And then maybe like I was thinking about doing a Jiu-Jitsu stream. Not Jiu-Jitsu Kaisen. But a Jiu-Jitsu version control stream. This is something that I've been really interested in for a while, but I haven't really had the opportunity to dig deeply into. So maybe we'll have a stream where we dig into JJ and we try to work through some workflows for JJ stuff. I may or may not do a Typist 0.14 video. We talked a lot about Typist on stream today. It might be possible for me to just turn that directly into a video. I might need to do some other things. I don't know. I already have the Typist video on my channel, and I think that still holds up. But they've definitely expanded scope since that video. That was like two and a half years ago. Two and a half years ago. Okay. So I don't think we need to be like, a slice is. From a contiguous memory perspective, but we should say something along the lines of a slice is a view into another container. In this case, we're passing a slice of all of the vec contents into the prints numbers function. I'm just going to type out the sentence that's in my head just to clear it. This is possible because a vec has a deref implementation for a slice, to a slice, to a slice. Okay, so a slice is a view into another container. I think that's a better way to frame that than the contiguous memory. You would enjoy a jujitsu stream too. Saturday morning stream is probably going to be Bevy. Maybe we'll do jujitsu next week. I don't know. We'll see. I really want to push forward on the Rust language stuff, so that's my current priority. Alongside the Bevy. So like Flappy Bird is already fully scripted. I just need to record it and put it up on Rust Adventure. Yeah. Lot of scripting and recording to do. In this case, we're passing a slice of all the vec contents, all the vec items, let's say, all of the vec items into the prints numbers function. Produces here's our thing. Do I have the, let's see, just quick start. Here's my little output. I'm going to start removing the compilation information from these outputs. Okay, this produces both calls to the prints numbers function, prints all of the vec items. We could also use a subslice, which is still a slice, but targeted is probably a weird word, targeted at a subsection of the items in vec. So that would be like 0 and like 1 dot dot equals 2 maybe. Dot dot 0 just looks weird though. So let's do 0 dot dot 1 and 1 dot dot equal 2. This also gets us to introduce ranges, which I think is pretty cool. That means we need the actual code that I was going to show the output for. Deref coercion and slices. Maybe just use pointing instead of targeting. Where did I use target? Yeah, I mean, references are pointers technically, but pointers scare people. Right? Like, if I start talking about pointers, a bunch of people are like, their eyes are going to glaze over. I don't think I need to use pointers to talk about references. Pointing isn't technically pointers, so it might be a pass in this situation. We could also use a subslice, which is still a slice, but selects a subsection of the items in vec. Slices can be selected with range syntax. In this case, we have a range from 0 to 1, which is just the number 0, and a range from 1 dot equal 2, which includes 1 and 2. We'll call this an exclusive range and an inclusive range, just to drive the point home that these are like not using and using the last value. It's a little weird to use such small numbers, I think. But there's no real reason to have like 17 numbers in this vec. Because the end excluded in this case, we use two ranges. An exclusive range from 0 to 1, which results in one item, the 0th item, because the end is excluded. An inclusive range from 1 dot equal 2, I see comments, but I'm going to finish my thought first. As long as you don't use the noun, it'll be fine. Yep. Select sounds a little bit more active than they actually are in reality, but I guess that's mostly a matter of style. Yeah, I could see that argument. Maybe have the vec 1, 2, 3 be different numbers to not confuse with the indices. I think you are absolutely right, actually. That makes a lot of sense. Let's make these 10, 20, and 30. I think if we do that, we should follow through and change all of the numbers for all of the examples to 10, 20, and 30. This way we don't have to like address a change for that example. Right? If we have 1, 2, 3 in all of these, we can do 10, 20, 30. And then just a quick read through. Ten, 20, 30, clone, 10, 20, 30, 10, 20, 30. We don't really use individual references to these numbers very often, so the change here is pretty simple. I do think that this is going to have to change, but this is the only place. This is the only place that we show the output. Is that true? We should show the output in more places. Yeah, then this is 10, 20, 30. Having these numbers be different is actually really important. Because any opportunity that we can take to not use the same word to mean two different things, or not use the same number to use two different things. I'm already done with the refactor, but yeah. That is easier to refactor when you have the examples outside via read and Zabra. Yes, absolutely. Agreed with that. I will do a pass through on this and like take all of the code and move it. Yeah, sneeze, I think. I will do a pass through on this. When I take all the code and I move it to actual example code in little projects, I will run it all. I will check it against the output. I will insert any more output that I think should be there. In the meantime, I'm just going to do the find and replace. It's already done, so it's not a big lift. And then we'll continue from here, and I'll maybe I'll add a to-do at the top. Okay, check all code output and validate. So I need to do that. So I'll just do it for everything. I think that's fine. Snapshot testing the output sounds like maybe a fun idea. Yes. I think that that can get set up. I can do an integration test. And that integration test can run for basically everything. Right? Because it doesn't really matter if I stick all of these in a single workspace. We will cover workspaces at some point in here. But if I stick it all in a workspace, then I can have like a crate that just goes through and runs, or like a crate that does all the integration tests. Or have, like, it doesn't matter if the integration tests are in the same crate then, I guess, either, because as long as it doesn't conflict with the code example, then it's good. That way you can also directly include from that snapshot. Ooh, that's a good one. I like that too. Do the snapshot tests, gather the snapshot tests. That means I have to use some kind of include here. So Zabra plus read, grab the snapshot test, show the output. I like that. I like that a lot, actually. Okay, where were we? We can also use a subslice, which is still a slice, but selects a subsection of the items in vec. Slices can be selected with the range syntax, starting at index 0. In this case, we use two ranges, an exclusive range, which we can link to. Let's link to ranges. I guess it's just range and range inclusive, huh? Just reading to make sure that I'm grabbing the right link from the right page. Worst case scenario would be I grab a link, I use it here, and it's the wrong link. And then somebody's like, but that doesn't say what he said it said. Two ranges, one for each function call. I think if we do this, we have to talk about deref coercion before it, because this is explicit range syntax. So deref, that's not what I wanted. Deref link deref because vec implements deref for slice, right? That's the way that this works. Make sure my framing is correct. Deref target slice. Due to certain rules, Rust will, how do they explain coercion is a question that I have. I want to align with the official content if I can. Right? There is a list of rules here. If T implements deref target U, so if vec implements deref target slice, and V is of type T, in a mutable context, so shared references, dereference V, where T is neither a reference nor a Aurora pointer, is equivalent to deref slice, or of deref shared reference V. That's an awkward sentence for a newbie to read. You think it is in the reference? You mean the deref coercion? Yes. The real thing that I want to mention here is item 2. I don't think I care about the other ones. Because the point here is that if you have a shared reference to a vec and the function takes a slice, this will automatically deref coerce to slice. That's the point I'm trying to get across here. Do we want to mention, we have to mention deref coercion, right? Like, Did a deref coercion. Is that a capital D? Let's call it deref coercion. And let's like, I have the link here, right? Yeah, here. Also mentioned that the explicit typing that requires, though, being confused why something doesn't coerce automatically can be pretty annoying for beginners. Absolutely. This is why I mentioned the implementation first, so that we can follow up with, because this is explicitly implemented, then you can do it, right? Rather than just being like, things can coerce to whatever. This isn't as here. This is possible because Vec implements deref for slice. We'll talk more about traits in a future. We'll talk more about traits later. The important information here is that there is an explicit opt-in to be able to deref a vec to a slice. You mean because the function explicitly receives a slice? Yes. It's possible because the vec implements deref for slice. We'll talk more about traits like deref later in more depth. The important information here is that there is an explicit opt-in to be able to deref a vec to a slice. Important to bring I think talking about this too casually leads to confusion. So I want to explicitly be like, this is a shared reference to a vec to a slice, right? This is not just like any random value to any random value. As an ergonomic improvement, deref coercion enables Rust to use the implementation that is defined to coerce a shared reference to a vec into a slice. This happens in our example because the function that we wrote accepts a slice and the argument we passed in was a shared reference to a vec. Would speaking notes be helpful here? Like ref vec into a slice. Like a ref vec into a slice. Speaking notes be helpful here. Oh, you mean like what do you call ampersand vec I32 in words? Like that kind of thing? Can we do speaking notes like that? TK, how to read vec I32. What's the best way to include those? The important information here is that there's an explicit opt-in to be able to deref a shared reference to a vec of I32s. I guess we can just include that as right. Just drop them in. Is that too much noise? Let's see. Deref coercion and slices. This paragraph. So we end up with, this is possible because of vec implements deref for slice. We'll talk more about traits like deref later in more depth. The important information here is that there is an explicit opt-in to be able to deref a shared reference to an I32, shared reference to a vec of I32 to a slice. I feel like the parentheses are a little bit weird. As an ergonomic improvement, as an ergonomic improvement, I feel like the parentheses feel weird here. I feel like they should be in a note. Read as. Oh, yeah, just like literally, yeah, like almost like just be real explicit about it. I do like being explicit about it there. One thing that I want to mention at the top here. One thing that will come with this is I'm anticipating that some people will just read it, but there will be a video associated with this content. So I assume that not everybody will watch the video, so thus the speaking notes are interesting. But when I'm actually talking about it, I will actually say that instead of like read as. Hey Lo, how's it going? We are doing Rust language stuff. We did a bunch of typist stuff to start. Oh, did that crash? That would crash immediately. Preview quit. Preview quit. It wasn't even typist. Typst. Working on it. I don't know why. I don't know why that's the word. I can change so many of the things that I say, and I do so all the time. But for some reason, this typst is really hard for me to do. Pull up that PDF. I have no idea why that crashed. Cool. I think that's okay. This gets a little bit of a wordy paragraph, I think. This is possible because of vec implements deref for slice. We'll talk about traits like deref later in more depth. The important information here is that there is an explicit opt-in to be able to deref a shared slice, or just messing up repeatedly now. A shared reference to a vec of I32s to a slice. As an ergonomic improvement, deref, I think that's the next sentence. I think this is separate. So as an ergonomic improvement, deref coercion enables Rust to use the implementation that is defined, to use the deref implementation that is defined to coerce a shared reference to a vec of I32s into a shared slice. This happens in our example because the function that we wrote accepts a slice, and the argument we passed in was a shared reference to a vec. What heading level are we currently at? Deref coercion and slices, sub-slices, cool. Yeah, but as one collected sentence, no need for two separate asides. Okay, you think we should do read as like this, like just a note there. And especially since we added that to the next paragraph, then that works better. The important information here is that there's an explicit opt-in to be able to deref this type to that type. Read as or read as. That dot is in a weird spot, but I don't think there's anything that I can inherently do about that because it's raw code there. Read as to deref a shared reference to a vec of I32 to a slice. I feel like there's too many twos in that sentence. To deref a shared reference it's a shared reference to a vec of I32s into a slice, maybe. You probably want some back shadow for the code later. Yeah, I don't know what we're going to do for formatting for a bunch of this stuff. I'm kind of leaving the formatting for later. Yeah, into a slice is what I went with. Yeah. There's definitely formatting issues here, right? Like this, all of these headings and stuff are kind of like just jumbled around and not really any more than like quick labels. The font boldness might be too much, et cetera, et cetera. So like there's a bunch of formatting stuff that I'm going to go through and fix. Okay, so subslices then. We could use a subslice, which is still a slice, but selects a subsection of the items in vec. Slices can be selected. Is that what we want to say here? Yada yada. They use the verb to slice. So maybe slices can be taken with range syntax, right? Because slicing is the action. You're slicing something, even though slice is also the name of the thing. We could also use a subslice. Slice is a subsection of the items in vec. Slices can be taken with range syntax starting at index 0. In this case, we use two ranges, one for each function call. 0 to 1, which results in one item, the 0th item, because the end is excluded. And 1 dot dot equals 2, which includes items 1 and 2. We'll say the item at index 0. Because the end, 1, is excluded. Yes, they will see in a second that, because we're going to show them the output, it will show them that 10 and 20 and 30 are the outputs. So we don't need to mention it in that paragraph, right? I assume that if you're going to read this, you're also going to look at the code example. I don't want to imply that I'm like splitting this. It's a little bit weird that it feels like I'm calling like split at, but I'm not. These are completely separate slices that could take any of the items. But definitely write index 1. Be consistent when you mean the value of an element and when an index. You mean here, because I use index first. At index 0, because the end, index 1, is excluded. An inclusive range, 1 dot dot equals 2, which includes indices 1 and 2. The items at indices 1 and 2. Yep. Consistency is good there. Views. Views is a good word for that. An inclusive range which views the items at indices 1 and 2. They are views into. I start off by saying these are views into, right? I don't use word. Yeah, a slice is a view into another container. So I'm already using the word view. Views then is the right way to frame this. An exclusive range which results in one item, the item at index 0. which results in viewing a slice of one item, the item at index 0. And then we can be a little bit shorter with the next one because it's the same thing. Only took us an hour to cover Deref coercion. Okay. I think that mostly covers Deref coercion. The other thing that we could mention is functions. But I don't think we need to yet. I think that when we talk about iterators, the first data structure we're going to talk about is vex. And we can then talk about where those functions come from. Do we talk about drop? I don't know. I don't think drop is really that important to cover here. I thought it might be. Calling the destructor is kind of an important thing. The idea that things do drop is important. It's funny that you cannot call drop yourself. Therefore, just call this other drop function. Drop is a more intermediate borrow checker topic, you think? I mean, I'm already on the fence about including it, so that's a vote for not including it. I feel like I could be convinced easily. We aren't really talking about borrow checking or anything at the moment. I don't know. I might come back and introduce drop after I read the whole thing, and I'm like, oh, we need a section on that. No need to include it. You don't talk about implementing it yourself. That's a decent. I could be convinced by that. I think implementing drop is kind of an advanced topic, actually. Knowing about drop, I could be convinced is an intermediate topic. But if it's not needed, then it won't be included here because we only get 2 minutes for each of these sections. So copy semantics. So far, we've talked about Rust's default behavior, move semantics. I think that's accurate, right? It is the default behavior. I know that copy just kind of like automatically gets implemented. But I think this is accurate. I don't know that I'm going to talk about copy specifically. I might mention copy here. We might leave copy for later. This is always like this is some strange advice, I feel like, because the general advice of you should implement traits if it's possible to implement them isn't always what you want. You don't always want something to be copy, even though it can be copy. Because you sometimes don't want implicit duplicates. By default, there we go. That's what I was looking for. I was looking for confirmation that this actually is by default. Not that it's just like the things most, or the ways that most things work, but that is actually by default. I was looking for confirmation there. I don't want to use trivial. Integers. How do I want to frame this? Do I want to frame this? I feel like we have to frame this at some point. Because otherwise people are going to look at numbers and be like, why do these behave differently? To do a proper copy semantics demo, we would have to assign and mutate a variable. Right. That's enough. I think this is just about the smallest copy semantics demo we can have. And then this could be a mutable reference to it. Right? Does times equal not work? Oh, because it's the reference and I need to dereference it. So a little bit weird from a beginner perspective. Okay, so far we've talked about Rust's default behavior, move semantics. This is what happens when we move our vec through the prince numbers function from earlier. Ownership passes from the variable into the function and so on. Sometimes this isn't what you want. For example, integers are lightweight and defined. I don't want to talk about bits. For example, integers are lightweight and often don't... How do I frame this? I want to frame this kind of as like an integer by itself is usually just used as a value and not used as like a state storage. For example, integers are lightweight. Do I want to say lightweight? I just want to skip lightweight. Integers are often used as the value of the integer and not as... how do I want to frame this? I need to find the right words. Integers are often used as the value of the integer and not as unique state. Yeah, star second equals star second times 2 is a bit complicated. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know that we're going to use that exactly. This is an exclusive reference to an I-32. I kind of want to do something here, right? Second dot something that mutates. But I kind of don't. As storage for unique state. Storage for unique state. Unique state feels weird. I gotta be honest. This paragraph just might take me a second to figure out how to word, right? Because I don't want to get into like the low level bits. I don't want to get into like the implementation details. I want to get into the use case. And the use case is like integers are just often used, like when you want a 5, you want a 5, right? You don't want the 5 that happens to be stored in a static, like, or whatnot, right? Integers are often used only for the value of the integer. Let's say this is number squared or something, or number... It's hard to construct this without having a function call, I think. Because like if I do this as number squared, then like, you know, number dot whatever is just going to be the number. And it's hard to show what's happening. Phrasing that part is hard. It might be worth leaving it to do and just letting your subconscious work on how to present it. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fine. TK, copy semantics in terms of how copyable objects, values are used. Rather than implementation details. I'll cook on this for a little bit. I think this example isn't great. String and string slice. We can talk about it at this point, but is that a really important thing to bring up? We've already talked about ownership and we've used vec to do it. String, this particular video or section of the content is not meant to be a reference for everything that Rust does. It is supposed to give you a vibe check on like what Rust is like to write and the high level concepts. So I think actually we might actually not include string and string slice. Alternatively, deref coercion we just talked about. This is a weird heading. I'm gonna TK heading change. There are many types that implement deref and thus have owned and shared variations. I don't know exactly how I'm going to phrase this. I'm just trying to blot down some ideas here. There are many types that implement deref and thus have owned and shared variations. An owned string is like a vec while the variants, you would say. There are many types that implement deref and thus have owned and shared variants. I feel like variants might be overlap with enums, but I think I'm going to rewrite the section anyway, so I'm cool with leaving it. Right, there are many types that implement deref and thus have owned and shared variants that can deref coerce that can take advantage of deref coercion. An owned string is like a vec, while the string slice as a code example, you can just copy the vec example with ABC. A great example. That's a great idea. Right. So string from, right. Maybe not that example. Yeah, that example. This is the right example. The only problem with that is slicing into a string is not a thing because strings are UTF-8. So if you index into a string, that's a weird thing to do, right? Because it's UTF-8, you can actually end up indexing into like a random character halfway through. Like you can think of emojis or kanji or anything like that. You can index into half of the word. So there's a reason this isn't implemented, which makes it a little bit harder to talk about, but is not terrible. Right? Like this all works. We don't need to subslice. I could mention that strings are UTF-8 here as well. Car boundaries are always awkward. Yeah. I think this is fine though, as like a code example, because then we can do the same thing with path and path buff. Right? Like having a couple of examples here that are basically the same thing. Prints numbers is the wrong thing to say here. I want to say like a vec, but I know that under the hood it's literally a vec. A string owns its data, similar to a vec. Thus, similar to the way we can take a slice of the vec, take a string slice, note, however, that because Rust strings are UTF-8, they don't implement indexing, and thus we can't take subslices directly. What are you developing? A Rust language introduction for people who are perhaps interested in Rust and know another language, but have not gotten that, like, 30-minute view into what Rust is. This does compile. I thought I tried that 2 seconds ago and it didn't work. Did I just mess up? Had I not changed the function signature yet? I guess I leave this out. Right? String indices are ranges of use size, so we have to use a range. It's just a little bit awkward to explain that. It helps our explanation here. Like this works in our favor, right? But like you can index directly into a vec and you can't do that for a string. It took you too long to get string versus string slice and when to use them. Don't leave it out. Just say you don't do it like that normally because it doesn't work with UTF-8. Yeah. That's fair, I think. Because this section at the end is wrong, so we can't include it. Note, however, that because Rust string are UTF-8, they don't implement indexing. This means that taking slices of strings likely isn't what you want unless you know you have ASCII-only content. For example, advent of code works fine, as you can end up in the middle of UTF-8 word boundaries. Code point boundaries, code point boundaries. Word boundaries is not the right, you're right. Word boundaries is not the right thing to say there. There is a grapheme iterator Rust. What is the name of this crate? Unicode segmentation. Splitting on grapheme clusters. I mean, depending on application, you might even want to use graphemes, yes. There are nice crates like Unicode segmentation, which handle UTF-8 appropriately. It feels unfortunate to have to do this like giant qualification on strings. But that is because Rust handles strings what I feel like is correctly, as opposed to assuming everything is ASCII and then having problems later. And I think that because this isn't like official content, we can call out and say, hey, this is, Unicode segmentation. Go use an actual implementation for how to do this stuff. Unicode segmentation is the one that I'm familiar with the most. I think there are other crates that do slightly different things, I think. Is the GitHub repository for this? Yeah, Unicode RS. Exactly what I wanted to look for. I think Unicode segmentation is the right one to link to. I don't think we need to link to everything. I think the one crate is enough. 100% agree on the string part. Unicode handling in different languages is a mess. JS uses U16, for example. Yeah. There was a problem. Oh man, there was a problem last year for Advent of Code, where you got it wrong if you used JavaScript because of something that was basically exactly that, if I remember correctly. I don't remember the day problem. But it was basically like everybody who used JavaScript got this question wrong, even though their logic was correct. So let's replace this with the slice version because that makes more sense, right? 0.1, 1 equals 2. And then same thing for path buffs. We probably need to bring this into scope, right? Yep. Path buff. Is there a nice way to construct this? Go Rust Adventure. Right? And this is path. I always flip these around, if I'm being honest. I have to look them up. You tend to do path new plus to owned in most cases. Interesting. Why do you do path new to owned instead of path buff directly? Because path to owned has to return path buff, right? Where's path? To owned. Yeah, to owned returns a path buff. So interesting. Feels better? Interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, obviously, right? Like it still gives you a path buff, but that's really interesting. To the top. Okay, and this likely we won't be able to slice into because I don't think it makes sense to slice into this. Right? Like, why would you slice into a path? Because Rust string slice, or I guess string, right? Slice index. And path doesn't have slice index, right? So it doesn't really make sense to take subsegments of a path. Probably not the right thing to do for pedagogy anyway. Being explicit about the type is the most important thing here. Oh yeah, I'm not going to do it in the document. I'm going to use path buff. I just find it interesting that you do path to owned. You know, it's one of those things that like if you get familiar enough with somebody and the code that they write, you can tell that they wrote it because it kind of has a signature. And that's part of like your code signature, if that makes sense. Like if I saw a path new to owned, that would be like a rem thing to do. And thus that code would feel a little bit more written by you. Pathbuff OS string in general has different layouts depending on OS, so definitely no indexing. Yeah. I don't think we're going to talk about OS string. OS string is weird. I mean, like it makes sense, but like it's just weird, right? I guess we can link here for the people who are interested, right? Because like slice index is why this works. And we don't have to say anything about it. But we can say like, because we haven't really talked about traits. So like Windows is UTF 16.2 as far as you know. Yeah. I think OS string is not something we're going to mention. Another type that has a similar configuration is pathbuff and path, where pathbuff is the owned data type and path is like the slices. I think that's good enough. Found result, of course. Let me confirm for myself that this is actually not going to compile. Cool. This is not a string slice. This is a path. I think leaving the unwrap without really mentioning it might be okay. We're going to do a brief description here. I guess we'll call this a string literal. Which could fail. So we unwrap. We haven't talked about error handling, but there is a whole error handling section. Here we create an owned path buff from a string literal, which could fail. So we unwrap. This path buff can deref to path. This path buff implements Deref for path, and again take advantage of Deref coercion. However, this time path doesn't, or path buff doesn't implement index or slice index, so we can't take subslices. When would be the right time to speak of the fact that string literals are also string slices into the static part of the binary? Maybe when speaking about lifetimes. I went back and forth in my head a couple of times on calling this a string slice or a string literal. Talking about lifetimes might be the right place to put this in general. I think maybe naming this as like string literals are also string slices. But like, this isn't really about string slices here, right? Like, so putting it here doesn't really make sense. I think we'll put it in lifetimes. I think you're right. I don't know if we have that in a heading right now, like lifetimes on their own. I put a little bit more effort into the deeper chapters, so I have to take some of this later content and match it up to this outline below and make sure that I've covered everything. Which we also stick lifetimes into the ownership section in this area. So I don't know if lifetimes is going to be its own heading or if it's going to be part of ownership. You would keep this section here, but call back to it later. Maybe write it as static stir. Let's see. Instead of a string literal. Oh, you mean in my notes? Let's see. How we create here, we create an own frame. No, I think string literal is the right thing to say here. And then in my notes, I had them in lifetimes, right? Cool. And that's noon. Hey, Rook, how's it going? Good to see you. Cool. So there's a whole ton more to write. Copy semantics needs a rewrite or like an expansion. It's kind of half baked. I think I'm pretty solid. I feel good about ownership right now. ownership feels a little long, kind of, because we also covered Deref coercion and some other stuff. I don't know if that'll fit into 2 minutes, but we'll find out, and I'll make modifications if so. It may turn out that I have to cut some stuff to cut this under half an hour, which will be okay. And then we'll do structs and enums, error handling, using dependencies, control flow, pattern matching, generics and traits, iterators, documentation, testing, and how to read docs. Maybe the how to read docs doesn't make it. It's going to be a wild video. $4,000 words. 4,000 words so far. That's a lot. We wrote 1,000 today. I think we were at like 3,000 when we started. That's wild. Okay, I think that's it for today. We are on 21 pages today of Rust language content. I am going to continue writing this off stream because I do really want to get this video out next week, which will require a lot of off stream writing, because I think today is probably the last day that I'm going to stream Rust language for the like overview 30-minute video, which means I have a lot of writing to do. And then we'll get deeper into the specifics in the other chapters. But yeah, thanks everyone for hanging out. This is fun. I am enjoying streaming, and y'all are the reason why. So I appreciate it. And I will catch you all tomorrow morning for Bevy stuff.